Okay. Ooh. Would that be the sec? Hey everybody, thank you so much for coming out this morning. My name is Tim Anderson. I am programming manager here at Enzion Theater and the Florida Film Festival. And this is our panel with Full Sail University, Eavesdropping on Echoes, Exploring the Art of Sound for Film. Before I bring everybody to the stage, I just want to take a chance to note that this is the 34th Annual Florida Film Festival here and the 40th anniversary of Enzion Theater. And for over 2 decades, our incredible partnership with Full Sail University has flourished and allowed us to continue to put on this incredible programming for you. So I think that before anything else, they deserve an incredible round of applause for being such passionate supporters of the arts and such great, incredible friends to us. So without further ado, I'd love to bring up the panelists, and they will begin.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. So we are a panel of audio specialists, all of a little bit of a different ilk. So just to start, I'm going to throw out a softball question so you guys can get a little better idea of what everybody does. It would be a little bit reductive of me to give any audio professional one title because most of us have to wear several hats. So just to acknowledge it individually, let's just go down the line for Jason, Alan, and Dave. The question is, any career in the film industry is seldom a straight line. It's all these weird zigzags of how you get where you are. So the question would just be, how did you get where you are now, and what do you do right now?
All right, I guess I'm first. Okay, so I'll start with what I do now. I'm primarily a re-recording mixer, work on the dub stage at Full Sail University. That's my day job. But outside of that, probably best known as a field recordist, producing sound effects libraries for Pro Sound Effects and Artlist. So that's kind of my passion is getting out in the world and recording. In terms of how I got there, like most sound people, started in music and was very passionate about music for a long time. And then got to a point where 20 years in, music had still made exactly $0. So how do you transition into something that uses the same skill set that you've been developing and the ear you've been developing, but hopefully in a way that can be monetized. So started in production sound, had some cool experiences with that, but realized I don't really love being on set, and then transitioned to post. And that's where I am today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alan. So currently, I am production sound mixer or production sound recordist. Just depends on the day and the job, how much I have to do at once. Currently also working over at Full Sail, but working here locally in Central Florida for all the major theme parks, and luckily able to do independent film every year or so. So I originally started when I was pretty young. I knew I wanted to be in the entertainment industry. I just loved the idea of storytelling. I bounced around a couple ideas and actually moved down here for school. Something that I always did as a kid was do live productions for churches or local live venues, so theater houses, things like that. So I knew some AV stuff. Came to Full Sail with an open mind, happy to do whatever I could just to be in the industry. And I saw that there was just a lack of enthusiasm for people wanting to enter the sound department. So I'm like, hey, this is a background I like. This is a background I already know. So let's dive into this a little bit deeper. From there, a little bit more direct. Was luckily able to get myself a little kit and start going onto sets, which I found that I loved being on set. So of course, never stepping on people's toes whenever you're in a bigger production, but just the process of helping everyone out on set, but also making sure your job is getting done is something I fell in love with. So doing that to this day, and just happy to be doing it continuously.
All right, hi, I'm Dave. I am on the dub stage at Full Sail. currently, freelance around. Typically, I like to do dialogue editing, but I do mixing whenever we can as well. I came up in New York in the 90s. I went to school to be in music, just kind of what Jason was saying. Wasn't making anything going on there. I actually couldn't get into the studio I really wanted to get into, which was Electric Ladyland. And so ended up having to pivot and got an offer to go to a post house. Had no idea what that was, but they were working on commercials and cartoons. And you know, the first time you get to make a weird boink or break a dish or something like that and get paid for it, you're like, this might not be too bad. So worked up there for a number of years, ended up moving down here to work with Nickelodeon. So worked in their international department, and then worked on with various companies. Most of the while I was also teaching at Full Sail, so working on reality shows and things like that. So kind of like you know, with both of they were saying is you got to be very diversified down in this market and stuff. So, you know, working on outside projects, whatever they may be, they all, you know, they always seem to change over the years. But, you know, in the end, through Full Sail, we've been really lucky to work on a lot of independent features and be able to work with some really great people on those. So that's kind of how kind of ended up here, and it's been a great journey.
Yeah, myself as well, just to go ahead and put qualifications, I'm also sound designer, field recordist with Jason with that company, and I was given this voice from birth, so also voiceover I'm often asked to sit in front of a microphone, but usually in a closet, so this is a little bit bigger, and say things. So pretty qualified there, and composer, so we all kind of work together a lot throughout our careers, and that's how we ended up on the stage together. So there is a little bit of a division here on stage in that we have two people that primarily work in post-production after the film has gone through production. So after everything on set's done, that's when Jason and Dave primarily come in, and Alan works in production. So I think it would be kind of a nice look just to take a look at what's different about those. So we'll start with Alan. Alan, if you just want to like walk us through a bare bones sort of what a production day looks like from your standpoint and what your responsibilities are.
My philosophy with this type of stuff is, number one, of course, dialogue is always king. So your primary job when being a recordist is making sure that your actors are mic'd up, or you're placing mics in a way that, of course, you're capturing everything you can to make as least amount of work for our post team as possible. Sadly, the reality of things is it's never going to be 100% perfect, and accepting that fact is a little bit hard at first, but also not letting it discourage you is even harder sometimes. So definitely arriving on set, making sure you have your essentials. Planning is also a huge part of it. When you're first starting working for a film, doing a little type of spotting with your script is very, very important, making sure you're having the gear that you need to, making sure if they have any sort of specialty shots, you're prepared for that. And then also prepared for the things that aren't supposed to happen is always a very, very hard thing to be prepared for, but it's something you need to be prepared for. Downtime is your enemy, and making sure that that happens as little as possible is going to make you stand apart, in my opinion. So again, typical day is just coordinating with the team members around you, understanding that you're all on the same team, you're all trying to capture this amazing project and make it the best version it can be. If you're working with a boom operator or something like that, just making sure that you guys are on the same page and making sure that you understand where responsibilities lie as, you know, team members, but also understanding where you might be able to help that other person if they're maybe in the weeds. Example of this would be, hey, all of a sudden we have a bigger scene and we have 6 talent today, and being like, okay, I got 3 of them, you got 3 of them, and just, you know, getting that job done, because sometimes time is not a resource you have in this department. A lot of other departments get a little bit more time than you, and then it's just like, hey, why aren't we shooting yet? It's like, well, you didn't tell me there were 6 people to love up. So yeah, but I love it, honestly. It's nothing to say that, you know, this is a hard thing to do. It's something I love to do, and always excited to do it more.
Yeah, day of surprises are no stranger to any part of the audio chain. I think we'll hear that as we now transition to talking about post-production. We'll start with Jason, if you just want to go through some of your typical responsibilities as well.
Yeah, well, first, I've had the privilege to edit Alan's dialogue, and it was very good compared to most. So thanks, Alan. The other thing I wanted to say about production sound real quick is it is a very tough job in terms of the conditions you're put into, and you're expected to get a good recording in the worst possible situation sometimes. So I feel that everybody who works in post-production, in the sound department at least, should be forced to do production, at least for a day. Step in for a day and see what you're up against. I've heard dialogue editors throw production people under the bus without any understanding of really what they were going through on set and the conditions they were stuck with. So I think it goes both ways too. I think people who do production should probably try to do a dialogue edit once and see what it's like from the other side. So very grateful to production in any case. So in terms of a day in the life of post-production, I don't know, it's kind of hard to, because there's so many different phases. Usually on an independent film, the audio post department is very small. For us, it's usually a department of 2, maybe 3 people. So you're wearing a different hat depending on what phase of the post-production cycle you're in. So, if we're in the editorial phase, for me, that's more sound effects editing. So it's like spotting through the film, basically building up an idea of what sounds are going to be necessary to be pulled out of the sound effects library or what needs to be custom recorded. Placing those on the timeline, making sure they're all in sync, that everything sounds great. But sometimes it's Foley day, and we're recording Foley to picture and doing footsteps and cloth and props. So you're in a more of a recording mindset than an editing mindset. Or at the end of the process, you're mixing and you're bringing all of these hundreds or thousands of elements together into a coherent mix. So for us, it's very diverse. Usually we're spending about 4 months to get all the way through the post-production process on a 90-minute film. And over the course of that 4 months, every day is just a little bit different. And that's one of the cool things about it. So that's my take on a day in the life, is that every day is unique.
And just to kind of piggyback on that, like when the dialogue does come in and we're looking at it, if you think about it, it's like when you shoot a scene, you could shoot a scene from multiple different angles. And what is going to be the issues with that? You could go outside here at the Enzian, and it's this beautiful, idyllic, nice little area, but there's a road right behind it, okay? So you may never see the road, okay? You might be shooting in front of all these beautiful, lush plants, and everybody thinks you're in a tropical island somewhere, but then you just hear this kind of constant rushing. You might have ambulances, fire trucks going by, but you only hear that. So as a dialogue editor, trying to remove that, to clean that up and make it sound coherent is a really big part of that. So different locations really cause us a lot of problems. Other things would be you get, say a kitchen scene and the refrigerators are on and the microphones pick up on that humming. Okay, we get those kinds of problems. Now, we have other things that we look at too, which is if we have to replace audio because maybe it was so loud that we couldn't get it correctly. Or I've had instances where actors say the wrong line, okay? And the director just threw his hands up and said, screw it, we'll fix it later, okay? So fixing it later means something called ADR, okay? Automated Dialogue Replacement. That's where the actor will come back in to the studio and actually then redo their line, lip sync along with themselves. So now we have to take that in the mix process and make it sound natural, like it happened on the set. Another function that you could possibly run into too is something we call walla. So say like you've got a crowd, okay? Maybe you've got a junior high scene, it's a PTA meeting, and all of a sudden, you've got to have the crowd booing or saying certain things. Well, on the set, maybe they didn't have him do that. So now we've got to get a group of people together. We've got to have them all saying certain things to build it up, to make it sound like it actually is happening. So there's a lot of different phases within the dialogue part that we have to do. And a lot of it is, of course, just trying to make it seem like it happened on the day of the shoot. Okay, so you know, we know that, you know, production is going to work their tails off to give us the best possible production. Some directors, they're more about getting the shot, okay? And if they have to replace audio in the studio afterwards, they don't mind doing that. That would be like your Peter Jacksons. They will do anything to get the right shot. But you get someone like your Christopher Nolan's, he wants to make sure that everything on the set is recorded. So they're going to make sure that, okay, that shot, it looked great, but it didn't sound great, let's do it again. So there's a kind of, you're dealing with different things with different directors. So getting to know your director and what they're going to want in the final process is really important for us.
So another thing that's always fun about any production role, or really anything in film, is you get this sort of weird access to a production, and sometimes the people and resources involved, and like none of the problems we solve in production are problems that are solved in other industries, having to calculate the number of marshmallows that would fit in a swimming pool, things like that. So can any of you think of any anecdotes of just sort of something from that world of strange access and responsibilities that this industry has? Any strange anecdote that you've run across that would not be found in other types of jobs?
I can go first if you want to think more about it. So what I do love about this industry is, like Drew was saying, you can be an expert at almost any other field and then also have a place in film. So you have so many different, you can be, you know, carpenter, you can be doing logistics and stuff like that. So you can have a specific role in film. Something I never thought I would have to be doing is keeping track of the FCC regulations with radio frequencies constantly as they slowly sell off public available frequencies. And again, it's just like, oh, I never knew that this would be part of my job description, is making sure that my gear is in line with a weird government regulatory agency, so I don't get dragged away in a black van. Like, I don't want that to happen. And then also keeping up with the weird type of mounting that you need to have. So, of course, you have a wire on a talent, so we can actually hear them whenever we're dealing with wider shots, and to keep it a little bit more consistent. And the weird ways that we need to hide that wire is, again, just nothing you really deal with anywhere else. You have things from little clips that have little metal prongs on it called vampire clips. You have little rubber mounts that are called, for some reason, RM11s. Like, why is that the case? I don't know. You have hair wigs. You have all this. You have straps that go around people's waist. And it's just like the weirdest thing that would literally be useless in every other scenario except for hiding this little wireless pack on a person so no one can know is even there. So yeah, that's just some of the weird things to keep up on. I have to.
Okay, I worked a lot in reality shows. I could name some really bad shows, but they were fun to work on. But one of the things about that, especially working with the TV networks, is they have a thing called standards and practices. And so you would always get, after you'd finish a mix, you would get a sheet sent to you, and it would be a list of proper words, words that had to be beeped and words that were okay to be used in the show. And I was always fascinated because different networks had different standards for that. Also, too, if you're beeping a word, so if it was an F-bomb going off, for Bravo networks, they wanted you to make sure that the F was heard. But if you were doing MTV networks, the cuss word had to be completely taken out. Okay, so you always had to be careful about which show you were working on because you had a different beeping type thing you had to do. Also, there was another thing that I still laugh about to this day. There were certain things like you could call somebody blah, but you couldn't talk about your blah. It'd be the same word, but it was just all in how the context was, how it went out to the thing, and you'd be just like, wait a second, is this the MTV show, or is this the Bravo show, or is this show? And you just would have no idea, and it just, probably one of the funniest things that I've ever worked with TV shows.
I guess for me, like, the weirdest situations tend to happen in the field recording role, particularly recording wildlife. You know, they don't really collaborate with you in any way. So it can be extremely challenging. You know, like, I hear the best wildlife sounds when I don't have my gear with me. And then you bring out the equipment and they tend to go quiet. But along with that, I've been hunted by coyotes, and not scraggly little Florida coyotes, but like Northern California redwoods coyotes are a lot bigger out there. Recording elephant seals for creature sounds. I didn't record these sounds, but some of you might be familiar. The creature sounds in Stranger Things, especially in season 1, are almost exclusively just raw elephant seal recordings that have been not really processed. So very alien sounding. You know, it sounds like the asylum when you get near elephant seals. So it's hard to not laugh when you're recording. So yeah, I would say that's my weird thing, is just wildlife interactions. Love being around wildlife, and field recording is a great way to kind of get up close and personal sometimes. It does get weird.
A group of elephant seals sounds oddly like a bridal party with way too much alcohol at a distance. Like, they just cackle and laugh, and it's the big whoop laughter. The one I'll mention from also our job in field recording was, we did all of the post-production audio and a lot of sound design for a film called Malum, which was it was set in a police station on its last shift that was about to be abandoned, and it was also shot in a police station that was about to be abandoned in Louisville, Kentucky. So our job, we kind of provide a service where we will go and kind of do a full workup of a facility, so that anything they do in the film, whether it be interacting with door hardware, prison doors, anything they might be able to use, we're going to record. And if we're there long enough, we're going to record even more that we can work into the score and creepy things and stings. And then we were given one very crucial piece of information, which is, this police station will not be a police station again. Its next destination is a pile of rubble. Do whatever you like. Which immediately puts us in the mindset of, like, if you remember being young and it was like bring your child to work day, and you did all the things you shouldn't do with a workplace, turning it sort of into a play place. That's what happened on this. We got to, like, those big archival cabinets with the reels on them. We would just crank them until they slammed into each other, sounding like freight train cars exploding. We did friction mallets on all sorts of surfaces, making groaning and creaking sounds. We got to do, again, like, I don't know if anybody's ever had a fantasy of this, but just slamming prison doors shut, getting the classic in there. It was a playground for us. And that's, you know, there are times in your career, and we all have plenty of them. It's just kind of hard when asked point blank, where you go, I can't believe this is a job that grown-ups do for money. And that's definitely one of those days of that job. Kind of another question that's going to take a little bit of imagination. So this is a little bit more sound design oriented. But in film, we have what are called non-literal sounds. And a non-literal sound just means that the way that we make the sound effect that's going to appear in the film is not the same as what actually happens on screen. It's not the literal sound, like especially things that may not have a big impressive sound, like a laser beam, for example, would in reality probably just be kind of a high hum, like plugging a cable into a guitar amp that's on a bad, dirty circuit. But it's our job to make something non-literal instead. Sometimes it's synthesized, sometimes it's material. My question is, can you remember any good non-literal sounds that were really interesting, the way that you achieve it that doesn't match the literal sound? I'll give you a moment to think, because I'll offer up kind of a small one real quick. There was a film that was on a golf course, and if you're ever filming anything, you have an audio department and they're available, let them know what you're shooting, even if you think it's not that important, even if it's just a small pickup shot of someone sinking a golf ball into a hole, because specifically that sound became nearly impossible to reproduce in a convincing way. The sound of a golf ball going into a ceramic cup hole that is in the dirt. We did probably 20 different takes of things that just weren't working out, and we were going to give up and go to a library sound, or actually go and do it on site since we were in a studio. And at the end, I was putting up everything we had, and I put one plastic cup into a similarly sized plastic cup. And you may be aware of that phenomenon. When you put it in, there's that little bit of air cushion as it goes in, and it made a little clink. And on the mic, the person in the booth, James is his name, he's like, whatever you did, that was it. That's the sound. So like at the complete point of abandonment, we found it, and it was simply the sound of two cups with a little bit of air cushion in between them. Do you guys recall any non-literal sounds that are interesting?
Well, so in the olden days, one of the easiest ways for us to do people walking on grass was, and because we still had analog tape around, quarter-inch tape, half-inch tape. So you would take analog tape, quarter-inch tape specifically, you would take it and you bunch it up into a ball. And all you had to do is then walk on it. And that was like the perfect grass, kind of like crunchy grass sound for you. Then taking cornstarch to do the other thing, which would be to get snow sounds. So crunching for snow sounds, you would take a bunch of cornstarch in a bag and just kind of. So that was always that very non-literal kind of thing that I always, it was just all basic stuff. And then the first time you're hearing it, though, you're like, oh. And then the great thing about the analog tape was it also worked for pom-poms if you happen to have a, cheerleading scene, too.
Well, I don't know. I guess like horror sound design, like this is a pretty typical example, but like any sort of gore, like blood and guts kind of stuff, it's, yeah, you could go out and record that for real, but it's going to be gross and maybe illegal and might not even sound the way you want it to. So from personal experience, I know that kind of noisily and grossly eating yogurt, close mic'd and recorded at a really high quality, when you slow that down, it's one of the nastiest sounds ever. Or just any sort of like maybe gargling the yogurt. If you need creature sounds, just like taking a little bit of yogurt in the back of your throat and just making air bubbles with it. When you slow that down or play it backwards, it's basically the nastiest thing you can imagine. So, just getting creative with that. I mean, of course, there's everybody's heard about like, breaking off lettuce or like breaking carrots and stuff for bone breaks. But I would advocate for like getting weird and wet with it, or so yogurt's great. The slime that kids play with on YouTube, I don't know what that stuff's called, just slime. I don't know. That's really nasty. If you get that suction going with that and kind of get the nasty sort of burpy sounds from it, also pretty gross.
And then there was of course the classic from T2, Terminator 2, when Jason Patrick as the cop goes through the jail cell door. Going through the bars, and all it was dog food, wet dog food. They had the can upside down, and they just recorded the dog food sliming out of the can, and that's the sound of him going through the bars. Okay, so that it's just a super classic experience, example of that.
Gargling yogurt in slow motion is going to be the name of my next single. It will also be the content of said single. So. I can't think of any stage that I've been asked to talk on an academic subject lately that hasn't had the following question, so I do feel obligated to ask. What do you think the effects and future of AI when it comes to audio are? Whoever feels motivated first, because there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of disadvantages, a lot of tools, but it really is still sort of Wild West early days. They really got on it for images before audio, which is pretty typical, but we're starting to see some of the audio versions of it. So what have you guys seen, and where do you think it's going?
Oh, I need to correct you. I think it's called A1.
Yeah.
I think that's the agreed upon term. I personally, I think certain areas of film audio are under threat from AI. If I was a voice actor right now, I'd be very concerned. I think we already have the technology to essentially replace, voiceover talent. That's kind of the negative side. In terms of like sound effects and mixing, I'm not too worried yet. I haven't heard anything compelling. There are different products out there that claim to do your sound design for you or do your foley for you, and it's just not capturing either authenticity or emotion correctly. Ask me again in 5 years, and I might have a different take on that. But as of now, I'm not terribly worried about like sound effects editing or anything related to mixing. On the positive side, dialogue editing, I think, is where we're seeing the biggest gains in that and the most usefulness. I'll let Dave drill into that a little bit more since he's kind of more of a dialogue guy. But we are seeing some positive stuff come out of it, in terms of just enhancing workflow and speeding up repetitive processes. I think that's kind of that's the best case for AI, is it's a tool that a professional can use to clear up repetitive tasks and make their job go more smoothly and really invest more time in the creative and enjoyable parts. So yeah, kind of a mixed bag, but not terribly concerned as of yet.
And on the dialogue side, there's one particular piece of software that we use for noise reduction, and they've already implemented an AI element to it. So that has, so you can say, hey, ask the AI, how do you clean this up? And it will do it for you, give you options and everything. So, I mean, that's one way. But then there's others that where people are more wanting to have it like as an automated type thing where you just put in various different sound recordings and it will clean it all up for you. So that's already happening in some ways. But again, going back to more of the creative thing for this, it's you can put it in there, but if somebody wants somebody that's got a certain style to the way they're doing things, I don't think that's going to go away for at least a while. There is some softwares, though, where if it's just like, hey, you've got somebody reading an ad and you've got music and you just put it in there and it just kind of reads whenever the person's talking, the music goes down, and when the person's not talking, the music goes up. So those types of things are already available. But there's a certain creativeness to it that I don't think that's going to go away just yet. So we'll see where that ends up going.
So my hope for this technology is it makes things accessible in a way that makes people then want to dive into it deeper. My anecdote about AI is if you talk to anybody, AI is amazing at everything except for the one very specific thing I'm very good at. And number one, that's just job preservation. But I think it's because when you're really good at that thing, if you're really good at photography, you're really good at dialogue editing, you're really good at making music, you know what it takes and the flaws. You can hear the artistic vision of other people doing that thing. So you're more in tune with it, so you can pick out the flaws where there aren't AI. But if I'm really good at making music, but I'm not the best graphic designer, I don't know what it looks like to be a great graphic designer. You can tell what it is to be an okay to good graphic designer, but to see, the great qualities of it, you need to almost be an expert in it yourself. So my hope is, hey, I'm someone who likes playing music, just say, and I'm not good at graphic design. So maybe using AI to get me more interested in graphic design or 3D modeling is my hope. Will that actually happen? It depends on how pessimistic I'm being that day. But my optimistic side is hopeful that it will kind of make people want to be more creative because it's kind of bringing the intrigue in like a easier path to start doing these more creative things that you've never really had an interest in before. So hopeful.
Yeah, and there's an ethical component to it. I've been involved with field recording projects that are building AI data sets, particularly in terms of like ecosystem health, determining how many animals, how many species, quantities, when, what time of day are in a given location. So it's not all bad. It's not all something to be scared of. Like this information is going to be serving naturalists and scientists, and it was ethically sourced. The people sourcing it paid for it. You know, they're not scraping data off the internet. They're not really taking advantage of anybody. So if ethically done, it provides opportunities. Like somebody's got to go out and record the data set for this. You know, so you know, interested in it from that perspective. I mentioned that I'm concerned about like voiceover artists, voice actors. There are ethically sourced voiceover models where the actors that are providing the voice are being credited and they're being paid and they're actively developing the AI voice model with the company. So that to me is a very different thing than just signing up for some unethical service that just, you know, scraped hundreds of hours of voice recordings off of YouTube or movies or TV shows or whatever and just blatantly stole it. So the name of that product eludes me at the moment, but if you're interested in AI voice stuff, there is an ethical product out there. And I think that's an opportunity for voiceover artists, and I wish there were more things like that. I think we'd have a lot less concern about AI in general if that was the more common practice.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's going to come down to directors can be quite picky about getting the performance that they want, and it'll be at that point where, you know, refining your prompt is quicker than just working with live talent to get the result you want. That'll be a big step for us to get past. And I think it's also relevant to mention that at the point we are right now in AI technology, we're starting to see the birth of some of the first services that are for making specifically non-AI sounds as well. So there is a whole other industry, albeit it will be sort of an artisan craft level, more of a premium, that will be libraries that completely exclude AI by design. So it'll be kind of interesting. We're just in the very early days of those coming up, so it'll be interesting to see where that goes. Now, AI is just one technology, and the audio field has had an explosion of technology, just like any other. One I'd like to just offer up to the panel is there any technology you've seen in, let's say, the last 5 years that's just sort of blown your mind, just sort of jaw on the floor, this is changing everything moment for audio?
Yeah, I've got one recently. Some of you may be familiar with the term immersive audio. So this, you know, we're sitting in this movie theater right now, and this would be classified as surround sound. I'm not sure how many channels they have, but if you look around the sides of the room, there's speakers on the wall and on the back and back here. So we're in a surround sound environment. Immersive audio is like the next step past that. In immersive audio, there are speakers on the ceiling now, so sounds can fly directly over you. There may be speakers on the floor. There may be additional subwoofers to get the room moving more. As immersive audio has grown, one of the main talking points with, you know, skeptics has been, well, how is the average person going to consume this immersive audio at home? You know, very few people have high-end audiophile home theater systems. Most people are going to be viewing media on headphones or on laptop speakers or iPad speakers or TV speakers. So how does this immersive audio benefit the mass market outside of a movie theater like this or a studio environment? I was skeptical too, but recently there have been developments in headphone technology that do a really, really great job of giving you that immersive experience, the feeling of things above you and behind you and all around you over headphones. The particular product, it's called Sony 360. It's kind of a convoluted process to get it working. Like you have to go to a studio, a Sony representative has to be there. They put microphones inside your ears and measure the sound coming out of the speakers filtered through your ears, essentially. And that gives you a very realistic depiction of what the room actually sounded like. I'm not excited because for the sake of consumers just yet, because that's a very difficult process to be in a studio and have this measurement done. But what I am excited about is the end result is very convincing, and companies are now rapidly racing forward to develop this technology so that the average consumer has access to it. And that's going to be huge. When everybody at home has access to immersive audio, it's going to be a total like sea change in terms of how film is consumed. And just the knowledge that now, if we can do it in a difficult way now, in 5 years, I imagine that it will be commonplace for a consumer to be able to access on headphones. So that's the thing that blew my mind, is just the realization that, yes, it is possible, and we're very close to it.
And I'll, piggyback on that, say it's just the same exact thing. It's just watching it, just the immersive thing and how it's becoming so much more prevalent now. How does it get out to the mass market eventually and into homes? That's going to be really interesting to see. I've also just noticed over the years how, for us to just do effects on anything, audio-wise, it was always you had to have a hardware box, and the hardware box cost $10,000 and stuff. And it has slowly over the years been becoming more software-based. We utilize a program called Pro Tools, where, back when it first came out, it was really not meant for the film side. It was mostly for just editing a couple of sounds digitally. Now it's like you can do an entire movie on a laptop. It's, that kind of stuff. The software has overtaken hardware to the point where we have a bunch of hardware on our mixing stage. We don't use any of it. It just sits there. We just keep the lights on because the software is so much more powerful. And that has really what's happened in the last 10 years for us, is that the software side of stuff has just gotten so much more powerful.
The one in just filmmaking in general I've seen is also software side. Of course, we always had editing softwares, nonlinear editing with Avid, which was very high ceiling to pass. Like, you had to have all that equipment with it. Eventually, Adobe came out with Premiere, which made it very, very accessible to everybody. And now we're seeing DaVinci Resolve come out, which you can go and get for free, and it's an amazing software. So just the seeing how accessible all these things are becoming to anybody, which means you now can go and start, crafting, like honing your craft at such a young age. So now you can, even get even better, even faster, is really exciting to me. When it comes to gear I use, just the general, like how everything is just becoming so much more compact. When I first started out, you had Lectrosonics, and you had one big box, one big black box that needed to be powered, and that would give you one channel of wireless. And then eventually they came out, that same size box gave you 2 channels of wireless, same exact power, same exact weight, and then they slimmed it down, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And then I think it was like 2 years ago, they made it that same size box, same exact power, now gives you 4 channels of wireless. And I'm just like, this is happening like in a way that now I'm going to be expected to handle 16 people at one time because I can fit in my bag. So, of course, price is still a little bit high, but it's not as high as it would have been back in the day with AV equipment. So just seeing how quickly this technology is shrinking and being able to be done, like I said, now it used to be 1, now it's 4 in the same exact size box, and it's taking the same amount of power, so you don't have to worry about having a big cart for it or anything is pretty impressive.
Yeah, that brings up a really good kind of where I wanted to travel next, is about this democratization of filmmaking with gear getting better and a lot of it cheaper as well. One of the things I always like to tell students is if anybody tells you that the barriers to filmmaking are about to come down, they have something to sell you and they're lying. The barriers came crashing down the day that the Canon 5D Mark II decided to let people record video on an average size sensor, and we've already had some other, audio was already ahead of the game by then too. Video was behind just because data rates were higher. But we've been in a period where somebody with a very small investment can make a feature film for record low budgets since, that would be 2007, 2008, I think. So just mainly, don't let anybody gatekeep you on that. We're already there, but kind of going off of that, and Alan, we'll probably start with you on this because you're in production sound. With some of the nicer gear that's come out, some of the budget gear is really starting to get quite nice, and the lines getting a little blurrier between pro and budget gear, to the point a lot of people in this room may be considering some gear purchases right now. And what I'd like to ask from you is, what do you think are the most essential, and beyond gear, what are the essential techniques people should be focusing on if they want to start managing some of their own production audio?
So this goes with any audio. Your biggest goal should always be thinking about your mic placement. If you have the right mic placement, you can make a not amazing, like expensive mic sound amazing, just depending on what you're recording. So just always get those fundamentals right, making sure you understand the techniques and science behind how, capturing a human voice works is just going to make that work with whatever gear you are stuck using at the time. I know the very big thing with wireless right now, or like the Rode Pros, and Hollyland has some, and DJI has some too. My only caveat with these types of wireless is that they run off the 2.4 gigahertz, which I call Wi-Fi band. The quality of this band is great. It transmits a lot of signal very, very quickly, and a high-density signal. The problem is it can be intercepted by a lot of different things. And again, whenever you're talking about gear that is a lot of that money is going into the shielding of making sure that other things can't interrupt that signal once it's inside that wireless box. So these cheaper, lower price point gears, that's where they're kind of not spending that money. And again, this doesn't ruin the quality of your audio. It only kind of hampers the reliability of your audio. So if you're in a situation where, hey, this is a passion project, this is me and a handful of people making this project that we really, really want to make the best version of itself, and you have the time to work around maybe, hey, this is just, we have to do this take a couple times because I'm just getting RF drops. Like, it's just dropping out on me because someone next door, is using their fifth cell phone or something connected to the Wi-Fi router. You're still going to have the quality. It's just not going to have the reliability. Now, again, I talked about this before with the FCC regulation stuff. We're losing more and more of our kind of free-range RF signals. It's being sold off more and more. So a way that companies are trying to figure out how to get around that is looking more into local recording. So you have your box that's sitting on your talent, and instead of sending that signal to your recording bag, how about we just put a micro SD card in that little box and record it locally, which is a really good solution. We're not now having to deal with that RF dropouts. The only problem with that is now you have a whole bunch of data spread around 5 different people. That's going to be a syncing nightmare. But technologies that were coming out, or becoming more accessible now, are things like tentacle boxes. So time code is becoming more of a thing. DSLR cameras are starting to accept time code, so we can all be synced together. So that's becoming a big benefit to everybody. So just making sure that whenever you are on set, that time code is synced, so your post team doesn't have to pull their hair out, is something you have to think about.
Yeah, and just to jump on, Alan just said something that gave me an idea, like a possible, good use case for AI would be when you have all those different SD cards all scattered around, and you have your multiple cameras, and you need to get all of that audio and video from 10 different sources back in sync. That's the perfect use case for AI, in my opinion. Like, if there's an app where you just throw all those files in and it syncs them and spits out a fully synced multi-track, I think that's highly doable, and that would save everybody in post-production, probably, hundreds of hours of labor. So that, I don't know, that just popped into my head. So, in terms of, I'll talk a little bit about the recording side, I guess. Recording technology is just crazy right now. The quality of microphones and recorders and the specs on them, you're really, once you are around or above the $500 price point, you're in excellent territory. The field recorder that I use most in the field is a Sound Devices MixPre. You can get those secondhand for like $500 or $600, and they're fully professional, fully capable devices. There's nothing they can't do. So that has been a huge boom to field recording. Microphones, one of my favorite microphones that's out there is the Rode NTG1, which is I believe a $200 microphone. You'd have to spend over $1,000 to get something better than that. So this is something we're going through with our students all the time. Is like I want to invest in this equipment, but I've got minimal resources. How do I do this? Well, that right there, throw in cables, batteries, all the other accessories you need. Still, for less than $1,000, you've got something that is like a completely professional, fully acceptable for any application field recording rig. So. And you could make the argument that 10 years ago that might have cost 10 times as much, easily. So that's something that's great. So yeah, in terms of boundaries to filmmaking coming down, that would be another huge one.
And well, I just want to say too is like like we're seeing like a lot of small studios, like people just setting up a rig in their room. We've had people rent out the dub stage because they've mixed it in their house on a small Genelec setup, which Genelec speakers are great. They're affordable, really small. They sound amazing and stuff. And so these people mix, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, we're going to a big theater. We need to hear it in a larger room. So people are like renting our room out just to spend a day listening on big speakers. Because they've already done everything else that they need to do in their bedroom, basically. So it's great that they don't have to spend it's like, hey, I need 3 weeks on the stage. No, they just need one, and they just need to go ahead and just make sure everything is translating properly. So it's great to see that.
So I'm going to throw a similar question to the post side of things as well. Speaking to sort of the independent filmmaker and maybe sort of the one-man army type of videographer filmmaker, kind of maybe more relevant to some of the people in this room as well. If somebody is just sort of getting started doing some light audio work, maybe just using the audio tracks in Adobe Premiere, Fairlight and DaVinci Resolve, maybe even Adobe Audition, what are some small steps they could take, not being full audio post workers, that could have some of the greatest returns for them, just getting started with some best habits, really?
Oh, I don't know. I'm gonna take a left turn here. I'm just gonna veer totally off course.
Thanks for that.
I think the answer there is get it right on set. Like that, nothing can replace that. No, there's nothing in the world. If the microphone's too far away, there is no software in the universe that's gonna fix that problem. You've got to get it right on the set. So I would say instead of worrying so much about the software, like invest in getting the sound right on the day. If you're a director, make sure you're listening. Make sure you have headphones and that you can hear what's going on. And if you don't like what you hear, know that miracles cannot be worked in post. You have to get it right on the day, and that's going to set you up. Like if something is recorded properly and care is taken, you might need minimal editing and mixing on that. And that, to me, that's where I'd invest my skill points.
And we do it all the time with like first-time directors, and we sit with them and we show them exactly, and then that's the whole thing is you hopefully got a director who's like, will sit down and pay attention to what you're telling them, which is like, I'm going to tell you exactly what you did wrong with this scene. It's like you shot it like this, you did like this, and now it sounds absolutely horrible. You got an actor who's, in a scene that is saying just like, oh my God, there's no one here. It's so absolutely quiet. I don't know what we're going to do, but you can hear the highway that's going on behind them that you can't see. And then the director's like, well, I mean, can you just remove that traffic? It's like, no, you really got to, and it's just, you have to think. You just have to think about the next step. And for us, that's, we go through the whole thing of like everything we do all the way down. We want to know exactly what format we're mixing this in, because we won't start until we have the end result all ready to go. So when we receive a movie, it's just like, hey, we're going to go through this whole process, so there's no left, there's nothing crazy that's going to happen. And so we try to get them to think about that as well. Think about the next step, do it right. And once you get it into the editing phase, you're going to find it so much easier. And we get it all the time with students of ours who like, hey, I'm helping somebody out on a project, and then they play it for you, and it's like, oh, okay, that's just terrible. Or they record it too low, or they record it in a noisy environment, or all these different things, and you just like you have to think beyond the day of where you are.
I'm going to continue stealing this and make it about production.
Yeah, thank you for that.
A very easy habit I see a lot of directors, DPs get into is, of course, we need to get our shots. We need to, make our day. So a solution for that is, hey, let's have 2 to 3 cameras on set and do a hybrid of a master shot, but also pick off our close-ups at the same time. And it's like, yeah, this is saving time, but when am I, as a boom operator, ever supposed to actually capture, if this is an impactful scene and we're gonna use the close-up, why are we getting the wide shot? And I understand the options should be there, like that's a valid point, but if the whole point of this scene is this is a very emotional time for this actor, let's get that close-up so you can have those options in post to make sure that that dialogue is as it's supposed to be. Because Dave and Jason talked about before, it's a hard task for an actor to relive those emotions that they're living on set. And again, it takes a lot out of them to get into the moment on set. We make sure we respect them. If they're going through like a rough emotional scene, that's when we back off. We make sure we're not messing with our talent more than we have to because they're putting themselves in that position. And it's a little bit like selfish to think that they're going to be able to do that all over again, but now they're not having the benefit of being in that set, being in that environment, being with their other co-actors. They're just sitting in a booth with headphones on. Like, to expect that they can get back to that place isn't always going to happen. So anyway, just thinking about, hey, let's just not make a wide shot constantly is what I would say.
Well, I'll give you a post one as well. And we see this with people that send us things, is they'll either, they want it to sound like what it sounded like on the set. And the thing is you're in post-production, you get to mold it into what you want. Okay, so, it's like what, they won't put any kind of ambient sounds around the character. And so they'll just be like, oh yeah, well no, that's what was recorded on set. But it's like, what do you want it to be, okay? I mean, it's like you got an exterior shot of a house. It's like, yeah, well, that's the house. Okay, well, what do you want the neighborhood to sound like? Do you want to put some barking dogs and distant sirens and everything and make it a bad neighborhood? Does that help sell your story? Or do you want it to be like birds chirping and distant kids laughing and playing? All of a sudden, now you've got a nice neighborhood. Okay, so a lot of, they when they're in that post side, they're just like, well, yeah, there's the house. And then this is a really bad neighborhood and stuff. And it's like, well, how does the audience know that unless you put some sound elements there that are going to help take them there? So I think that's where sometimes it's a stupid little thing called ambience. And you can manipulate your audience's feelings just by doing very subtle things like that.
Yeah, just to kind of to tie that all together as well, Alan really hit on that with trying to do the master shots and the punch-ins, tackling that from a visual side. That's just not a great way to do it from the visual side as well. A lot of people try and light a set to be this playground that anybody can look great in any shot. It's just not realistic. For our punch-ins, we always relight. We're going to bring in big lights closer to them. They may not exactly match the master shot, but they're going to look better for it. I always like to use the analogy of building a house for making a film, and a lot of people would think the construction phase is production. But what the production phase is going to the hardware store and the contractor's depot. You're getting your supplies at that point. So you're not there trying to get the whole house in one shot. You just need the door. You need this wood for this. And completely acknowledging that a lot of these hardware components are going to come from post-production on completely isolated field recording work. Cinema is about dealing with those smaller bites. Videography is about trying to capture it as it happened. And that's sort of the harsh divide between those two worlds and philosophies.
I'm definitely going to steal that construction analogy. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That's now an Alan Harris original.
There's the Alan I was looking for. Okay, so we are at our 11:30 now, and I like to run punctual. So 11:30 is our time to transition to questions and or answers. And what I will say is if you have a question, I am padding a little bit to give you time to organize your thoughts. But if you have a question, I will need you to walk over to that microphone over there. Is audio specialist. We do not actually acknowledge sounds that do not come through a microphone and are not amplified. So if you refuse to use this mic, we will not acknowledge your question. So if you have a question, I have now padded this time long enough. Please make your way to the microphone to ask us a question, or be afraid, or don't. If you don't, I'll ask a question. Here we go. We got a couple takers.
Please form an orderly line at the microphone.
Okay, so you guys mentioned the use of AI and mostly talked about it being used more as a tool. Do you have any thoughts on some of the other uses of AI where they've recently, there was a film where they actually like added an accent to someone or kind of helped them speak a language in a sense that they didn't speak natively or didn't really have that much knowledge in. Do you have any thoughts on like that type of use of AI?
So you think you could have the AI Boston generator?
We all wish we had
He
that.
didn't park his car by the bar properly. Yeah, let's put that filter on him.
Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting one because could you perceive that as being relatively harmless? Maybe, but my question is like, was there no actor in all of Hungary that could perform that role? Like you're talking about an entire country. They didn't have anybody that could have been the right fit. But I don't know. I mean, like movies forever have had people with accents doing the wrong accents. Like, does it really change things that much if it's more authentic? I don't know. Yeah, that's a kind of a gray area. Like because you could say the bad things about it that I just said, but you could also say, well, at the end of the day, it didn't really hurt anybody, and the accent was more authentic. Yeah, I don't know. That's a
It's
quandary.
not exactly AI, but I think you actually have an interesting anecdote about the voice in Artifice Girl, Jason, about how that all ended up going down.
Yeah, so we did a sci-fi feature a couple years ago. It was actually at Florida Film Fest. Did it premiere? I forget if it premiered here, but anyway, it played at Florida Film Fest.
Yeah.
And the main character was an AI girl, but she was played by a real child actress. So at a certain point in the story, don't want to do too many spoilers in case anyone happens to see this movie, the AI becomes so advanced that she's effectively human intelligence, but she's hiding it from the software developers. She's willfully keeping a secret that she's advanced. And events occur that cause her to break, and she kind of like gives up on that lie and reveals that she's human advanced. But all the way through the movie, up until that point, her performance was very good, but it was too organic. It was too naturally human. So what we did is we trained an AI voice model on the actress's voice. So we used her lines from the movie, the couple hundred hours of production recordings that we had, and trained the model on her voice, and then retyped it into the AI, and then used kind of more advanced software tools to get the lip sync perfect. So the AI performance is now frame accurate in sync with the real performance. And again, like that is, to me, it's kind of an ethical gray area because AI was used in the film. Like if we had to put that little thing at the bottom of the credits that said like no AI was used in the creation of this film, we would not be able to do that. But there was a specific artistic reason for it, and we used the actress's voice to train the model of her voice with her consent and permission. So, different people might feel differently about that, and that again, I think that comes down to the individual and the fact that it is a little bit of a gray area. But I think thinking about the ethics of it early on is the important part, instead of just blindly doing it.
I definitely think ethics needs to be at the forefront of everyone's mind. I think at the end of the day, if it is a tool that's being used, just like filmmaking, it's going to be another tool in the belt. So I think that's great. Right now, my pessimistic side says it's another gimmick. Time's going to tell if that's true, but filmmaking's no stranger to gimmick. I mean, how many people actually bought a 3D television? I remember when I was growing up and I saw one of the Rugrats movie, I went to Burger King and bought the Smell-O-Vision card that I watched, that I had while I was watching the movie. So, I mean, filmmaking isn't foreign to like, oh, this is the new keyword gimmick that gets people in the seats. I mean, we just had Barbenheimer because it was a giant marketing thing. So as of now, I see it as a gimmick, just to say, hey, people, this has AI, and look how cool that is. Now, over time, 3D went away. Like, no one cares about watching a 3D movie anymore. So I feel like there will definitely be elements that are there to make those specific story beats hit the way that a creative director needs. But time will tell, I think, is my opinion about it.
Sure. I think we have another question.
Hi. I mixed a film last year, and some confusion I ran into is sometimes when I was mixing the film, I preferred to listen to it through headphones because they provided clarity, and then other times I wanted to listen through the speakers because it gave the film more body. So I was curious, is there a standard when you're mixing or mastering a film? You use one or the other, or do you find there are situations where they're both tools and you're just choosing between them?
Yeah, I guess my take on that would be that headphones are maybe great for like the editorial phase, when you're getting stuff in sync, you're doing all your layers, making sure everything's where you want it. And then for mixing, I would generally advocate for switching over to speakers because your stuff like your EQ decisions, your compression, everything like that is going to be kind of filtered through that environment. Another really big thing to consider is just scale. Like this screen behind us, what is this, like 30 feet wide? So there's a width there that you may not experience on headphones. Case in point, this drives me crazy in movies. There will be a tiny little sound, like setting a microphone down, and it'll be recorded and mixed in stereo. But now in a movie theater with a 30-foot wide screen, that stereo image is 30 feet wide, and I suspect maybe that was mixed on headphones or on smaller speakers, and they didn't really catch that super unrealistic width was there. And if they had mixed it on speakers, they might have punch that in a little bit and put it more in the middle. But I mean, are headphones great? Are there awesome sounding headphones? Yeah, totally. Could you mix a movie on headphones? Absolutely. You just have to be mindful of the translation. I'm sure Dave will have some.
Yeah,
some
and I
feedback
just
too.
think it's you kind of like you said, editing is fine, but you want to have that where you want to hear the mix coming together. You want to have the air, just like space in the room to really feel it. And it doesn't have to be big, it doesn't have to be huge, but it is just getting some of the space in the room because a lot of what you're doing in a movie is you've got people in a room talking, so you want to try to put yourself there to really get that feeling. So yeah, I mean everything Jason said is exactly it. It's a great tool, It's like, hey, listen, I like to cut dialogue like out on my back porch next to the pool with headphones on, it's awesome. Got my feet up, cup of coffee, it's awesome. But when I go to mix, I need to have speakers.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think the last bit I'd put on there too, for anybody really just starting, really common bad habit is anybody with a laptop, they have the volume up and volume down buttons. And sometimes we've just been trained that people reach for those, not even remembering that they've reached for them, just out of reflex, that volume up and volume down button. If I could invent one accessory, it would be sort of like that cap they put over like the arming weapons switches on a jet, to put over that up and down button that just says, no, once you have this set, don't tackle any of your issues or pain with those buttons, do it in the mix itself.
And that's why I think it's important to like have, if you are mixing, having LUFS meter that you have, so that way you can make sure that you're monitoring consistently. very important.
One more?
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate this talk and really informative. This is just a question about field recordings in particular. Is there any requests for certain like bird sounds or like audio sounds that really make it like a regional thing for certain people? Or, you know, there are requests for like up north in New Hampshire. It's probably a different soundscape for most natural places. So I'm just curious with your guys' experience.
Yeah, that's an entertaining one. We actually have a very specific story about that. So there is a show on Paramount Plus called Star Trek Picard with Patrick Stewart in it, reprising his role from Next Gen. And so he lives at a vineyard in France. And I'm watching the show, and I'm listening very carefully, as I do when I watch stuff. And I'm hearing Florida mockingbirds and scrub jays and red-shouldered hawks. And this is supposed to be set in France. And furthermore, I start listening. I'm like, no, that's my recording. I know that recording. I definitely did that, and that was definitely in Orlando, Florida, not in Bordeaux, France, or wherever he was supposed to be. So we catch it, or there's like a really famous story like on a golf broadcast of like playing birds that are not remotely in the area and people like having a problem with it, or you hear loons everywhere. Like loons are only at far northern latitudes, but like you'll be watching a movie set in the rainforest on the equator and you'll hear a loon call. I guess the question is, does anybody outside of like this room care about that? I don't know. The general public, maybe the authenticity is not as crucial to them.
Yeah,
I think
I'd
on a
say
live
outside.
broadcast, it wouldn't matter as much because, like I said, like I did some mixing up at PGA Tour, and they would just have a loop of just ambient from some guy's backyard in Jacksonville that they would just play underneath like highlights and stuff, and it was like, oh, okay, it doesn't matter where the golf tournament was, but yeah, but now coming from New York, there was times where we had to have very specific things. It's like, oh, you know what, the client really wants this to sound like Central Park. Can you go up, take a rig up to Central Park and record and don't get mugged?
Audio is one of those things, in my opinion, that it's one of those pictures where it's like, oh, I see this picture, and some people see it one way, but as soon as they see it another way, it takes on a different image. Audio, in my opinion, is a very on or off. If people are buying it, they're buying it. But that second it broke for them, they're never going to unhear it. Of course, like you said, going to those authentic places is going to 100% make sure that it doesn't break for anybody. And it's kind of a weird arbitrary line, how close you can get to breaking that line. And yeah, I guess it's just up to the person. Once you cross that line, it's broken, and they're always going to hear that Florida bird, even though they're supposed to. And it's just kind of arbitrary where that line is for the general public. So yeah, it's just kind of one of those weird things.
So, yeah, the short answer to your question, loons and owls work for night anywhere. Roosters work for morning anywhere, and pigeons work for cities anywhere. So there's your answer. Ironically as well, we're going in 3 weeks, we're recording Bordeaux. Like we could, I don't think they'll take a revisionist sound effect, but we will in a few weeks have a much more accurate sound. They could go.
Thank
And
you again.
remember, crickets at night. Always crickets at night.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to piggyback on that and say thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. And then my question is, what makes a good collaboration between a director and a sound designer?
These are really good questions from the
Yeah,
audience. Yeah,
that's an awesome question. For me, a really big part of it is the director knowing what they want and being able to articulate that. While also giving some creative leeway. One of my least favorite things in talking to a director about sound design, which is very, very subjective. Take creature design, for example. You're doing some horror movie with creatures in it. You could take that any number of directions. And when you are speaking to the director and say, hey, what do you want this particular creature to sound like? Do you have a reference in mind? Is there a mood you're going for? Is there a certain type of animal that you might be influenced by? And their response is just like, it's all good. Just do whatever. I hate that. Because what that means, I've just been beaten up enough times that I know now that means I have to design the scene like 2 or 3 times and keep different elements muted, and then when they inevitably don't like the first one, then you mute it and move to the second design and maybe even the third one. So it causes a lot of conflict because this is a very time-consuming process. You know, I could spend an entire work week, 40 hours, just doing one scene of creature design, and then if the director didn't give clear direction, then they don't like what I put forth, then that's just wasted my time. And now it's made me like a little bit more belligerent towards the director, which definitely adds up over time and strains the relationship. So that to me is like literally be the director, give clear instructions, and have an idea and like know what you want it to be. But then on the flip side of that, do give the sound department the opportunity to be the professionals that they are and the creative people that they are, and give a little bit of leeway at the same time.
I think there's an AI joke in there where it's like if the director could train the AI to do the sound design, they would do it, but a director can't explain exactly what they want. So we're never really worried about AI taking over that part of it. But yeah, it's you know, talking with, there's a reason why also that you see a lot of the same directors working with a lot of the same crews, whether it's composers, it's sound designers, because they've already gone through the awkward phase of, okay, you know, it's like, I know I'm going to bring something and they're not going to like it and stuff, and then we're going to come back and they're going to like it then. You know, we get a lot of like, oh yeah, it sounds great. And it's like, no, I need more. I need more. We've had entire movies we've played for a client, and they got up and said, oh, just change that one car pass by and we're good. And it's like, that's all you're going to give us on a 90-minute movie? Okay. But then we've had others where it's like they're 10 minutes into the movie and they're on page 7 of their notes, and you're like, okay, we obviously are way off with what's going on.
Real quick, which one, if you had to pick, would you prefer to work with? The one that takes a million notes or the guy that doesn't give you anything?
In the middle.
No, if you had to pick.
In the middle.
I don't know. When the director stood up and said no notes, and they also paid that day, like handed checks that day, I like that guy.
Well,
The movie wasn't good, but I love that director.
I think to sort of tie it up, like we actually have a really relevant story recently. We were out in LA at Formosa Group where they mix a lot of big TV, like one of them being The Last of Us. And for The Last of Us, the showrunner there, they said, has not just hours, but days worth of notes. And it was kind of inspiring to hear because like you expected that to be a story of lament and like, this is torture to work on this. But they said this is one of the cases where he knows what he wants so exactly and specifically that the show is better than they ever could have imagined because of that collaboration, not in spite of it. Now on the flip side of that, they were also doing, I think it was Mythic Quest with Rob McElhenney. And he came in and he sat through 2 mixes and he basically said, you guys are nailing it. There's no note I could give you that would improve this. And he doesn't even go into the mixes anymore. So there's definitely 2 parts. I think the most important common thread there is to go in knowing what you want. And I also think it's really important, we see this a lot, sometimes in an art by committee setting, people have an opinion just to have an opinion, to not look dumb. But if something sounds good and you like it, just say okay. There will be plenty of other things to comment on, but if a scene sounds good, say, that sounds great, I love it, let's move on from here. And I'll kind of put a bow on this too, because I think this is probably our last question, but this really is kind of a good encapsulation of everything about our weird industry of filmmaking. Is aside from what we do to keep people safe on set, it is a completely non-standard process, especially when we go to different regions. Every different production crew is kind of like a different road family that tends to coagulate over repetitions, like the same people who would work on Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul. They're literally filming another Vince Gilligan show now just because those people want to keep working together, and that's not uncommon. But in this sort of weird collaboration of artists, we all find what format works specifically for us. So it's always a tricky question, especially when it comes to directors, to say what's the way this is done, because the real answer is the way it's done is whatever way works for your very specific interpersonal connection of crew. that gets a product out the door. So always take it with a grain of salt when somebody says this is the way it's done, because the real answer is just the way that filmmaking is done is when you have a crew that when you put all of those separate pieces together, the output is a better product because of the collaboration rather than in spite of it. And I think that's the thought we'll leave on today. So thank you for the great outro question.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you all for coming.